The afternoon sun glared against the cold silver walls of the factory, its brightness mocking the pain that lingered on the ground below. A small doll lay broken on the dusty pavement, its arm twisted and face smeared with dirt, a silent witness to the chaos that had unfolded moments earlier. Nearby, a young woman struggled to rise, her blonde hair tangled, her lips split, and one cheek already turning purple. Her daughter, a little girl no older than 6, stood trembling beside her, clutching the damaged doll to her chest. Her wide, tear-filled eyes darted between her injured mother and the road that led away from the factory, the road where the men who had hurt them had just fled, laughing. If you believe in kindness, in standing up for those who can't stand alone, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Tossilent Stories. Your support helps us keep these real, heart-touching stories alive for everyone who still believes in second chances. The mother's name was Clara, a young widow trying to hold her world together with nothing but love and willpower. She worked endless shifts at the Weldon Auto Components factory, barely earning enough to cover rent and keep food on the table for her daughter Hazel. But she never complained, not once. Every morning she'd tie Hazel's little yellow ribbons and promise her, "Someday things will get better." Hazel believed her because when you're 6, you believe every promise that comes from your mother's trembling smile. But that day, everything broke, both the toy and something inside them. Clara had found out that the factory manager and his men had been underpaying her for months, taking advantage of her desperation. When she finally confronted them, they laughed. When she begged, one of them shoved her against the wall. And when Hazel ran in, clutching her little doll and shouting for them to stop, one of the men snatched the toy from her tiny hands, ripped off its arm, and threw it into the dirt. Then they left, leaving a bruised mother and a sobbing child under the open sky. Clara tried to stay strong. She wiped the blood from her lip and whispered, "It's okay, baby. Mommy's fine." Though her voice trembled with pain, Hazel didn't speak. She just stood there holding her broken toy, her tears dripping silently onto the pavement. But fate, it seemed, had other plans for them that day, because just then the distant rumble of engines began to fill the air. The sound grew louder, deeper, until it became a thunder that shook the street. Hazel turned her head and saw them. 5 bikers, their chrome Harleys gleaming under the afternoon light, their black vests marked with the red winged skull that read Hell's Angels. They slowed as they approached, their leader cutting the engine first. He was older, rugged, with salt and pepper hair and a thick beard, tattoos curling down his arms like stories carved in ink. His vest read RL, CHLS. When he stepped off his bike, the world seemed to pause. He didn't need to ask what had happened. It was written all over the scene. Clara's trembling hands, Hazel's shattered doll, and the bruise spreading across the young woman's cheek. The biker's jaw tightened. He lowered himself to one knee so he was eye level with Hazel. His voice, though deep and gruff, carried an unexpected gentleness as he asked softly with his eyes, "Who did this?" Hazel lifted her tiny hand and pointed toward the factory. Behind him, the other bikers exchanged silent looks, the kind of look men share when words are no longer needed. The leader stood, his shadow stretching across the ground, and nodded once. Then, without hesitation, the 5 men turned toward the factory gates. Their engines roared back to life, filling the air with a sound that was part thunder, part justice. Clara called out, "Wait, please don't." But they were already gone, riding straight into the factory lot where the same men who had laughed moments ago now stood frozen. Workers stopped in their tracks as the gang of leather-clad riders pulled in, engines idling like growling beasts. The leader dismounted first, his boots heavy against the concrete. The factory manager stepped forward trying to look confident, but his smirk faltered when he saw the fire in the biker's eyes. No one knows exactly what words were exchanged that afternoon, but the shouting could be heard from the street. What people remembered most was how quickly it turned to silence, the kind that hangs heavy, the kind that ends things. When the bikers finally rode back out, the factory floor was still. The men who had hurt Clara didn't laugh again that day. Hazel stood gripping her mother's hand as the roar of motorcycles returned. The leader stopped his bike beside them and took something from his vest pocket. A new doll, soft and clean, its blue dress fluttering in the breeze. He handed it to Hazel, who stared at it through her tears. Then, without a word, he reached into his wallet, took out an envelope thick with bills, and placed it in Clara's trembling hand. She tried to protest, but he simply shook his head once. a silent gesture that said, "You've been through enough." The bikers turned to leave, but not before the leader paused and looked down at Hazel one more time. The little girl managed a small, tearful smile, clutching the new doll close to her chest. Then, with a thunderous roll of engines, they rode away. 5 men, who the world often called dangerous, yet who had just done something profoundly kind. The next morning, the factory gates remained closed. Rumors spread that management had suddenly resigned. Clara never saw those men again, and for the first time in years, she walked home with her head high. Hazel skipped beside her, the new doll in her arms, the sun glinting off its plastic face. It was as if the world had quietly restored something that day. Not just a toy, but faith. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Tossilent Stories. Every story we tell is a reminder that compassion can come from the most unexpected places, sometimes even from those the world misunderstands. Before you go, tell us in the comments, would you have done what the bikers did? Because sometimes heroes don't wear capes. They wear leather and ride toward the storm.